September 19th, 2024, Nintendo released a sudden and to some surprising PR statement. In this PR statement, Nintendo announced that they had filed a patent infringement lawsuit alongside the Pokemon Company against Pocketpair Inc., the creators of the recent, critically acclaimed and highly debated game, Palworld. Needless to say, this announcement shocked the gaming community, with many fans from English-speaking countries quickly picking a side, either being pro-Nintendo and Pokemon Company or staunchly on the side of Palworld, with very few people remaining neutral on the topic. In the Western English-speaking community, it seemed like a tug-of-war between the two sides. But how about the Japanese community? In this video, I will be explaining and detailing the general reaction and opinions of the Japanese gaming community to this news. Additionally, I will also be explaining a little bit of the Japanese legality issues of this lawsuit, as the lawsuit will be heard in a Japanese court of law. However, please do keep in mind, this video is not an opinion piece from me. Additionally, as this may be a controversial subject, I will blur the profile pictures and remove the usernames of any individual ex-users from any screenshots used in this video. However, this will not be done for any corporations or media outlets. For the sake of easy watching, this video will cover these topics in this order. So let's start off by once again having a quick look at the English and Japanese press release published by Nintendo. Looking at the two statements, the English release is basically a word-to-word translation without any differences. Now focusing on only the English release, there are several important points to note. First, all companies involved are Japanese companies, with Nintendo's head office located in Kyoto, Japan, and Pocketpair's office in Tokyo, Japan. The lawsuit will be held in the Tokyo District Court, and the lawsuit being filed is for patent infringement, and then goes on to say that Nintendo will continue to take necessary action against infringement of its intellectual property. This press release was shared in both English and Japanese on the Nintendo Co.'s X account. The Japanese responses from Japanese users show a majority of support for Nintendo. However, there are a few comments from non-Japanese people. Now, let's have a look at a few responses from Japanese netizens. Palworld, at last. But it's important to protect one's intellectual property. Nintendo's legal department, terrifying. Of course, they haven't won every case, but it seems like they win a lot. I think when it's necessary, they should fight thoroughly to protect their valuable work. It's like the four Emperor, red-haired pirates, in this week's episode of One Piece. Everyone should have known what would happen, and I think they would have let it go if there had been a sincere response. But the subsequent actions were outrageous, so they need to be held responsible. Is it true that the people overseas are bashing Nintendo? It seems like they think that as long as something is interesting, anything can be forgiven. For example, the Berserk controversy. The first half of this tweet states how most Japanese people think Palworld is bad, but it's not the same with the Western community, and expresses some negative thoughts about the behavior of the foreign fan community. In the second half of this tweet, the user goes on to say that the fact that the other party is a small or medium-sized company doesn't matter, and the CEO of Palworld has repeatedly provoked Nintendo, so it's only natural that this would happen. So in these randomly selected responses, we can see that the general opinion is that the lawsuit was bound to take place eventually, that it's deserved because of the actions of Palworld and the CEO, and that Nintendo is in the right to protect their intellectual property. Unfortunately, there is also some anger and confusion for the way that the Western-speaking gaming community is supporting Palworld. Although such feelings of negativity are a shame, I've seen similar emotions expressed by some English speakers, expressing anger at the Japanese community for their support of Nintendo. Additionally, it seems like the general consensus is that Nintendo will win the case, whereas the English tweets under the English translation of the tweet are mostly negative, highlighting the difference of opinion between the two communities. For a second source, we can go over to a Japanese gaming media account to see more reactions from the Japanese community. I've chosen to look at the responses from the media outlet Famitsu's article on the Nintendo press release. Some people were saying, Nintendo hasn't responded, so it's fine, don't fuss about it. But just because they didn't respond immediately, it doesn't mean that it's okay. Considering it's taken this long, it probably means they have collected all of the evidence before attacking. And in response to this tweet, another user wrote, "I'm guessing they also rated for Pocketpair to generate a certain amount of profit. It will be easier to make a claim for damages if the specific amount of damages for the patent infringement is known." This user shares information on the patents held by Nintendo Co. Ltd, stating that about 130 currently held patents can be viewed via the link, and encourages guessing which patents will be used in the lawsuit. They then go on to share information about Nintendo's other recent patent infringement lawsuit against Kolopla. Another user replied, "It's basically impossible to avoid infringing on all patents, not only just in the gaming industry. In general, the unwritten rule is to use each other's patents as little as possible, without overdoing it. Nintendo is usually tolerant of this, especially when considering startups, but this time it seems like that unwritten rule may have been broken. I hope they try their best. I don't understand how that production is accepted by the public." The infringement is probably regarding the game mechanic, where you hit with the ball to catch and battle by throwing it out of your hand. It's pretty much the same as Arceus. If it had been changed to a cube that captures with a beam of light, it probably would have been safe. And in a quote retweet, with an attached image showing the Japanese announcement of Pocketpair's joint partnership with Sony Music and Aniplex, this user writes, "I'm guessing this is what angered Nintendo. It's like the White Cat project trial. To a certain point, Nintendo will allow plagiarism, but if their IP or technology is stolen to create a licensing company and take money from other businesses, they will take every measure to crush them." These tweets show how people accept Nintendo's choice to file the lawsuit, and an understanding and expectation of companies such as Nintendo, who own many game patents, to be lenient with other developers up to a certain point. Now let's have a look at the response to the lawsuit press release that was published by Pocketpair. This press release statement was published across both the official X accounts and official websites in both English and Japanese. There are a few differences in wording and even information shared between the English and Japanese press releases. For example, the first sentence of the English release says "yesterday", while the Japanese says "kyo", meaning today. This shows that there was at least some time passed between the publication of the Japanese and English press releases. However, it's also worth noting that the press releases were posted onto both the English and Japanese X accounts at more or less the same time. The second section is particularly interesting, as the Japanese press release states that Pocketpair had not yet received the complaint, whereas the English press release states that they have received notice of the lawsuit. However, both statements explain that they are unsure about what patents are at the heart of this infringement lawsuit. But the Japanese release goes on to say that Pocketpair has no plans to suspend or change the operation provision of Palworld. This statement is not included in the English press release. The third section of this press release is more or less the same, but the English version has more descriptors and positive claims, and an overall more thankful feeling towards their supporters. For example, "We know that our games bring joy to millions of gamers," and "Palworld was a surprise success this year." Comparing the size of these two sections of text alone shows the difference. It's only speculation, but the difference between the English and Japanese versions of this section of the press release could be because Pocketpair were aware that they would receive a much more positive response, along with stronger support from the Western community. The last part of both press releases are mostly the same, apologizing to fans and other supporters, while saying that they will fight to encourage indie developers as an indie company themselves. Now that we have a better understanding of the press release published by Pocketpair, as well as the difference between the Japanese and English versions, let's have a look at a few of the responses from Japanese netizens. A user who responded via quote retweet wrote, "We are a small Tokyo-based indie company. I'm sorry, but can you please stop trying to drag in people who are earnestly working on indie games? It's funny that they are now saying, 'We are an indie company. Big companies are mean to us. Help us,' when they are doing business with Sony and Microsoft on a large scale and making a lot of money." Nintendo is so kind to indie developers. They make sure to always create special features for indie titles all the time. This has nothing to do with being an indie developer. They just got into trouble. I don't think the size of the company matters. If you think your assertion will be accepted, does that mean it's okay for others to infringe on your company's rights? It's called an indie game, but everyone thinks it's just a Pokemon ripoff, lol. If you think it's hindering development, then you should make a game that's full of original elements and then say that. You have no shame or pride, plagiarizing the ideas of others and still saying this. You are too thick-skinned. For a while now, I've been annoyed by the comments made by the CEO, so I'm really glad it seems like he's going to get crushed. Shouldn't you apologize first? Even if you can't do that, please don't bring up indie games. Or are you planning to make excuses again without even doing that? Be careful when posting, lol. There are too many unnecessary sentences that leave a bad impression. Did the president or someone like that post this? Someone should stop him. These are just a small handful of the responses shared on the Japanese Twitter press release by Palworld. Needless to say, the reaction is far from positive or supportive for Palworld. Many people took offense to Pocketpair's claim as an indie studio, claiming to stand up for the sake of other indie developers. There is also a lot of negative feelings towards the president of Pocketpair in particular. We also see support for Nintendo, with people saying that Nintendo doesn't often act on infringement, that it was only done because Pocketpair broke an unwritten rule, and that Nintendo is normally kind to indie developers. For additional opinions, let's have a quick look at some of the responses that were shared on Famitsu's news article post regarding the Pocketpair press release. It's worth noting that there were much less responses or interactions here when compared to the article published regarding Nintendo's press release. It's impossible for them to win against Nintendo's super powerful legal department. Nintendo's legal department needs to go all out and display their strength. I hope they will also take out the Mario Kart businesses that have started showing up again in Tokyo. The next comment we will be looking at says, "It's unclear what patent is being infringed upon, but if it is regarding the catching, all they can really do is change it to a lasso. The main issue is probably the licensing company created to do business with Sony Music Entertainment and Aniplex. Just like the situation with Kolopla, they are acting like the licenses are their own." Needless to say though, these responses are also negative. But this doesn't mean that Pocketpair has zero support within the Japanese community. So let's take a look at the cornerstone of this lawsuit, patent infringement, and what it means in Japanese businesses. When the lawsuit was announced, many were surprised to read that the lawsuit would be focused on patent infringement rather than copyright issues, especially since there has been a long-running debate about similarities between various Pokemon and Palworld pals. But at the moment, neither us or apparently Pocketpair know what patents are being claimed as being infringed upon. Currently, within both the Japanese and Western communities, the most common belief is that a particular mount and ride patent, along with the specific ball aim and catch summon mechanic owned by Nintendo, are the most likely contenders. However, I must stress, at the moment this is purely speculation. After the speculation of these particular patents being the focus of the lawsuit started spreading, unfortunately, the information that these patents are dated in mid-2024 also began spreading via several ex-users. With this, many people in the Western community started to believe that Nintendo only filed for the patents of these mechanics purely to attack Pocketpair. However, this is not necessarily the case, as the patents being shared were only the American patents, whereas there are Japanese versions of these same patents with the documented filing dates in the years 2021, meaning that they predate the release of Palworld. Regardless, when it comes to patents in Japan, there is a first-to-file rule, meaning that the first to file for a patent will have ownership, even if they are not the first one to use it. And this is exactly why Nintendo has ownership of as many patents as they do. In the past, game developers have had issues with patent squatters, also commonly referred to as patent trolls. These patent trolls are people who will patent ideas and concepts used by others, often large companies, if they notice the patent hasn't yet been applied for, to then sue or extort other parties for its use. Because of this, it's considered to be common protective business procedure for large companies to patent anything and everything they possibly can to protect others and themselves. However, with the public's acceptance of this practice also comes the expectation and responsibility to be generous with the ownership of these patents. For those who don't know much about patents, Nintendo owns mountains of patents, but are just keeping them to prevent other companies from filing for patents, which could cause a decline in the gaming industry. It's a sword that they don't often wield. The fact that they drew it shows how angry they must be, is a comment shared by one ex-user on the topic. In fact, when it comes to patent infringement, while Nintendo is no stranger to lawsuits, patent infringement lawsuits are not super common, with the most recent example being against the company Kolopla. Nintendo allows their acquired patents to be used freely by other developers, so that patents don't hinder the growth of a healthy gaming market. However, in the case that Nintendo is angered, almost any game can be halted due to patent infringement. Kolopla got in trouble for attempting to make money with game patents and make other developers pay for their usage. Palworld will also not be allowed to do it either. This is a tweet that was trending regarding the issue. In it, the user mentions the previous point, that the reason many people believed that Nintendo rightly sued Kolopla was because they seek to make money from these patents, going beyond the line of just using these patents in their game. Going to show that while in the West, hoarding of so many various patents is seen simply as unnecessary, greedy, and borderline evil. Whereas in Japan, the same actions are seen as a necessary evil that a large company like Nintendo must be responsible for and act accordingly upon. All in all, it's obvious that the differences between the opinions and reactions of the Western and Japanese communities are vast, with many in the Western audience feeling the instinctual need to support the underdog in this fight, whereas on the other side, the Japanese community instead feels a strong sense of loyalty to the massive corporation. It all makes sense if you consider the very different cultural norms and upbringing between the two communities. Even more so when you consider just how much importance Nintendo holds, not only to the Japanese people, but to the entire nation of Japan as a whole, as Nintendo has been operating continuously in Japan for well over 130 years now. Additionally, Nintendo is a provider of jobs to many people, branching out over several fields. Nintendo has basically become a part of the Japanese identity. Unfortunately, I have seen some hate from the Western community towards the Japanese community for their unyielding support of Nintendo, as I have also seen some hatred from the Japanese community towards the Western community for the support of Pocketpair. It's truly unfortunate that the two communities are unable to come together and understand the other side's opinion more earnestly. As I'm someone sitting in the middle of the road, as a Westerner who has lived in Japan for quite a long time, I'm able to see both sides of the coin. But we are all the same as gaming fans in the end. We all deserve to enjoy the games we find comfort and joy in. I hope that this video has helped at least a few people understand a different perspective on this whole unfortunate and messy battle. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, it's time for me to say bye bye. Mata ne!